What if justice got it wrong? Not once, but many times. And the ones who paid the ultimate price were just teenagers. In this video, we look into some of the most shocking and tragic stories of minors who were executed in the United States. These aren't just statistics. See, these were real kids. Some troubled, some broken, some perhaps even innocent, whose lives ended in prison cells and execution chambers. This is the dark truth of America's past with juvenile executions. Let's begin with Dalton Pryan, just 17 years old, who on July 2nd, 1977, shot and killed a police officer after being pulled over in Louisiana. Despite a history of mental illness and a low IQ, he was sentenced to death. His final meal? A seafood platter and orange soda. His last words were haunting. He told his family to stay strong and hoped his son wouldn't let this define his life. Dalton was executed in the electric chair in 1990. Then there was Johnny Frank Garrett from Texas, also 17, who was convicted of assaulting and killing a 76-year-old nun in 1981. Years later, he was found to have multiple personalities, possibly caused by severe childhood abuse. Even the Pope tried to intervene, but Garrett was still executed in 1992. His last words? "The rest of the world can kiss my ever-loving ass." Charles Rumbaugh, another teen from Texas, was convicted of killing a jeweler during a robbery. He was 17 at the time and already had a long record of criminal behavior. He was executed by lethal injection in 1985 and said in his final words that he forgave others even if they couldn't forgive him. Glenn Charles McGinnis, arrested at just 17, shot and killed a dry cleaner employee during a robbery. Despite the circumstantial nature of some of the evidence, he was sentenced to death and executed in 2000 without any last words or meal requests. In Virginia, Douglas Christopher Thomas was in love with a 14-year-old girl, Jessica Wiseman. Her parents tried to keep them apart. One night in 1990, Thomas, then 17, with Jessica's help, entered her house and shot both of her parents. Jessica served just 7 years. Thomas was sentenced to death and executed in 2000. In a final interview, he said it overwhelmed him that she walked free while he was 4 days away from death. Then comes one of the most debated cases, Ruben Montoya Cantu. In 1984, Cantu, just 17, was convicted of killing one man and injuring another in a robbery gone wrong. But later, even the DA questioned the verdict. Witnesses recanted. Doubts surfaced. But it was too late. Cantu was executed in 1993 at age 26. He simply said, "No, sir," when asked if he had last words. His case remains one of the strongest arguments against capital punishment for juveniles. Toronto Patterson was 17 when he killed a woman and 2 small children over a car. Even though the crime was horrific, his final words before his 2002 execution struck a deep chord. He said he was sorry, but he didn't believe he deserved to die for something he claimed he didn't do. Napoleon Beasley's story also stirred national outrage. At 17, he shot and killed a businessman for his car and tried to kill the man's wife, who survived. The 2 other teens with him got 40-year sentences, but Beasley got death. Before his 2002 execution, he said, "The person that committed that act is no longer here. I am." He blamed the justice system for being as flawed as he once was. J. Kelly Pinkerton, also 17, killed 2 women in separate incidents during robberies. He was executed in 1986 after 7 years on death row. His final words to his father were, "Be strong for me, I'm at peace." He prayed before the injection and whispered, "I feel dizzy," as he died. And then there was Sean Sellers, who at 16 killed his parents and later confessed to killing a convenience store clerk. He claimed he was under the influence of Satanism and possessed by demons. While in prison, he converted to Christianity, appeared on talk shows like Oprah, and begged for forgiveness. He was executed in 1999 at the age of 29, despite a global outcry for clemency. His last words were directed to his step-siblings. "Turn to God, and He will heal you." He sang hymns until the moment of his death. But perhaps the most heartbreaking of all was George Stinney Jr. In 1944, At just 14 years old, George was arrested in South Carolina for the murder of 2 white girls. He was interrogated alone, without a lawyer, and allegedly confessed. The trial lasted just a few hours. The all-white jury deliberated for only 10 minutes. George was so small, the electric chair mask didn't fit his face. His last words? "No, sir." In 2014, 70 years later, a judge vacated his conviction, calling it a gross injustice. George Stinney was finally declared innocent, but only after his death. Stories like these show us the disturbing truth about how justice sometimes fails the young, the vulnerable, and the misunderstood. In 2005, the U.S. Supreme Court finally ruled in Roper v. Simmons that executing minors is unconstitutional. But for the children who already paid with their lives, that decision came far too late. Whether guilty or innocent, many of these kids were broken long before they committed their crimes. Some were victims of abuse, mental illness, or poverty, and some, like George Stinney or Reuben Cantu, may have never been guilty at all. If you believe justice should never be rushed, especially when it comes to life and death, hit that subscribe button and share this video. These young lives deserve to be remembered, but the stories don't end there. Beyond the headlines and cold facts lie haunting details that force us to ask, were these teenagers truly beyond redemption, or did the justice system fail them? Take the case of Sean Sellers. At just 16, he murdered his parents and later admitted to another killing, all while claiming he was possessed by a demon named Ezerad due to his obsession with Satanism. Sellers would later convert to Christianity, appear on national TV, and beg for mercy, but was still executed in 1999. Or consider Douglas Thomas, only 17 when he killed the parents of his 14-year-old girlfriend, under her guidance. While she served just 7 years, Douglas faced the ultimate penalty. The deeper we look, the blurrier the line between justice and vengeance becomes. Their final meals and last words weren't just tradition. They were chilling echoes of lives cut short, of teenagers who would never grow into adults. And even decades later, names like George Stinney Jr. still haunt America's conscience. He was executed at 14. 70 years later, he was declared innocent. How many others weren't so lucky? The question remains, how many juvenile offenders were sentenced not just by judges, but by public fear, flawed trials, and a system slow to admit its mistakes? And how many more names are we yet to hear? If this disturbs you, it should. And it's only the beginning. More cases, more truths, more injustice, coming soon.